Balatro is a roguelike deck building game that uses poker hands as the way to score points to win rounds. The game was developed and drawn by one person, goes by the name Local Thunk. And I think it's pretty cool that we have such a fantastic game that sold pretty well already, drawn and developed entirely by one guy. So how does this work with poker hands? Balatro assigns a value to each of the poker hands from high card all the way up to straight flush. Obviously, the harder to obtain hands like four of a kind, straight flush, full houses, those are worth more initial chips, but they also have a higher score multiplier. Every hand is the value of the cards plus the value of the hand times the multiplier, and that's the total number of chips that you get for that round. You get to add your card's value to the value of the hand as well, which is multiplied by the multiplier for the final score. What I mean to say is, if you play something like a full house with kings and jacks, that's going to be worth more than a full house with fours and twos. Each round you have a limited number of hands. You also have a limited number of discards, so you can get rid of bad cards and try to sculpt these higher and higher value hands in order to beat the round's blind. Once you have enough chips in order to beat the blind, the round ends, you collect your money and you move on to the next round. There are 3 rounds in an ante, and every game is 8 antes. So once you finish the 8th ante, you won your game of Balatro. Okay, so that might seem a little simplistic in how the game is scored, and from there it gets a little bit more complicated and a little bit more fun in my opinion. So the roguelike part comes from the unlocking progress. Each time you play through a game, you are actually fulfilling more and more achievements and unlocking different jokers that you can then purchase in the shop. Jokers are the special meta cards that have a separate hand in the UI that increase your score. Some of them will give you bonus chips, some of them will give you bonus multipliers, and some will give you a extra bonus, which is a times multiplier. So it takes your final score and adds a big multiplier on it. Could be a ×2, could be a ×4. So that's your chip score times its multiplier score. That total gets multiplied again one more time. In addition to unlocking jokers, you have different decks that you can unlock. The early game decks are usually unlocked by just beating the game with the deck that comes prior to it. Other decks are going to show up after you fulfill their criteria to unlock him. Every time you win with the deck, it increases the difficulty the next time you play with that deck. They call it raising the stakes, haha, because it's poker. This is similar to the Ascension levels in Slay the Spire, so if you're familiar with deck builder games, you've probably played something like Slay the Spire, and you're probably used to the Ascension difficulty ranking. It's exactly what raising the stakes does. Each stake adds a extra layer of difficulty on top of it. Things like the antes requiring more score to get through, the first blind giving you no money, and other effects like this. Right now, there are over 150 jokers to unlock in the game, and some of them have some really crazy criteria. I still have unlocked some that require things like getting $400 in the bank, which seems really crazy to do when the most amount of money you can get in a round is like $11 from the round win, your hand value, and your interest. In addition to all the different jokers, and the different decks, and the different levels of stakes, there's also different game modes that you can play. The most popular being the endless mode. You can take a deck after you've beat a round of Balatro. You've played all 8 of the antes, finished the final boss, you got to the you win screen, you got all your unlocks from it. You can then take that same deck and put it in endless mode and see how far you can take it. So if you've got something that's got a really cool scaling ability, or you've got access to some sort of like really broken joker interaction, you can push the score limits, and then you're going to start seeing scores that are going to require millions of chips, billions of chips. It's really crazy what this game has in terms of its scaling, and from some of the clips I've seen, there have been people who've pushed some really insane strategies with their decks. So that's a lot of fun to see in the game. So I wanted to tell you about the gameplay first because I think that's what's going to hook you. The graphics in this game are pixelated, so that gives like a sense of nostalgia or a retro sense to it. The retro feeling is also magnified by the mild CRT effect that's going on with the game, where it's got screen curving in the corners and it's also got scan lines going throughout. I find that to be rather nostalgic because I grew up playing games from that era that is trying to emulate, but some people might find the pixelated style to be overdone for indie games. Like, it just seems to be the default graphic style we go to. Hey, I'm gonna make an indie game, it's gonna have pixel graphics. Like, okay, really breaking the mold today, aren't we?
Daring today, aren't we?
But the gameplay here is what's going to hook you. This game, I mean, unless you're a real sucker for retro graphics, the gameplay on this is what's gonna hook you. That's what you're looking for, I think. So the music for this game isn't going to win any awards. I find it to be pretty chill, almost hypnotic. It's not distracting. So this makes this a good game to play while you've got something else playing on the background. So if you're watching like a YouTube documentary or just slogging through a whole bunch of One Piece, you can play Balatro at the same time and you'll be able to listen pretty well with what's going on the other side. The game isn't super distracting on that. I will say though that the sound effects are very rewarding. There's like a little ding effect each time that a card scores or a card triggers one of your Joker effects. And if you've got like a bunch of effects that say redo this or do this again or do this multiple times, that ding each time it triggers, it gets a little bit faster and a higher pitch in the tone until it's like, and if you've got a lot of stuff, it'll like machine gun through all of the effects to get to the final total of the hand value. What I mean to say after describing all that is it's a sound effect you like to hear. It's like the hit marker from Call of Duty. It's quick, it's short, it's little, but it just tickles your brain to let you know, hey, you're doing it right, you're doing it right. And it just does it again and again and again. And it's probably, that's the Skinner's box of it, is what's getting me to go, okay, I gotta keep playing this. I want to do hands like this over and over and over because I want to see ding, 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 all the way up until I win. So it might not be a shocker that I am totally recommending this game to people. I really enjoyed this game a lot. I was recommended it after I played Crop Rotation and did my review on Crop Rotation. Someone else said, hey, you like numbers getting really big? You'll probably like Balatro. And at the time, Balatro was only a demo, but I played a whole bunch of the demo and I said, yep, I can't wait for this game to come out. So if you like games like Crop Rotation or Luck Be a Landlord, this might be the perfect type of game for you where you're looking for these gameplay synergies and mechanics. The game welcomes you to break it, I think, where it wants you to score millions and billions of chips per hand and do this per round and go all the way up to the stars and how much potential that each of your decks has access to. Also, if you're into the deck building mechanics, so if you've played something like Slay the Spire, I think you might like this game too. Now, it's not going to have like the direct combat that Slay the Spire has, which might be a little bit easier to digest, like HP values and damage values and things like that. This is just put a bunch of cards together and hope that they score a bajillion points. But there are good deck building mechanics to this. Like I mentioned earlier, there's the shop, which you have access to the tarot cards, so you can add different effects to the cards that are already in your deck, and you can use cards to take cards out of your deck permanently so you can get rid of the bad ones and try to focus in on the good ones. So if you're focusing on the Joker that's even Steven, well then you're going to want to eliminate all the odd cards out of your deck, all the aces out of your deck, all the faces out of your deck. And someone who's a deck builder that says, oh, I want to have more of these cards because they trigger these certain effects, would get rewarded from seeing that and then accomplishing that strategy and going through all the way like that. Similar to Slay the Spire. So if you're playing Ironclad and you go Heavy Blade, well then you're going to look for strength synergies, but you're not going to always have access to Heavy Blades. So you might look for cards that hit multiple times, so that way you can really multiply your strength effect on a whole bunch of different cards. Instead of just having all in on Heavy Blade, I don't draw Heavy Blade, well my strength just makes my strikes hit for like 3 more damage, because that's pretty bad. But you see those synergies and you try to build towards those synergies. So if you like deck building, I think this game will reward you for playing it like a deck builder. And if you're someone who likes to play, I gotta make the numbers even bigger next time, well then this game's gonna tickle your brain too. I want to end things off by saying that this game has already sold 1 million copies, and it just came out this year, at least at the time of writing and recording this review. I think this is a shining star of indie games because it was developed and drawn by one person. I don't know who the music credit goes to, but still just like a bulk of the work was done by one guy, and he made such a masterpiece of an indie game that takes the deck building genre, the roguelike genre, And we've seen a lot of roguelikes hit the indie sphere before, like Dead Cells, Slay the Spire, so many different roguelike games. I mean, there's bajillions more beyond that I can name, but it seemed like such an indie game kind of like trope that, hey, I'm gonna make an indie game. Okay, cool. It's gonna have pixel art graphics. Okay, cool. It's gonna be a roguelike. Okay, cool. I think Balatro captures a lot of the elements that make a good roguelike and a phenomenal deck builder, and it's presented in a way, I mean, poker's been played for years, hundreds of years. And so it's a familiar setting for people who've played any sort of cards before. They have probably a passing knowledge of poker, at least like aces are better than fours, you know, when you're playing, you know, any card game that uses a deck of cards. So it takes something that's already really familiar and adds these strong elements of roguelike and deck building and makes a really good game that's really polished and welcomes you to break it with whatever strategies you can put together that are game ending. Alright guys, that does it for my review of Balatro. If you stayed through to this part, thank you so much for watching until the end. And if you're new here, if you could hit that subscribe button, that really helps me out a lot. I try to make a game review about once a month. I also try to live stream at least 3 times here on the channel. I play a variety of games with an emphasis on strategy and role playing. Those just happen to be my favorite genres. But I play all sorts of stuff, and chances are if you liked Balatro, that you'll probably like a lot of the games that I'm going to play on the channel, either that I've already done and I'm going to review, or that I'm going to play in the future. So I look forward to seeing you guys in the next stream or video, but till then, take care, stay safe, stay out of trouble, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.